welcome. Today we are going to discuss on the relationship of employees and with the organization and ethical issues with respect to that. If we remember, we have identified employees as one of the important stakeholders of the organization who contributes to the function of the business and also who gets affected by the business processes. In the earlier class, when we started with contextualizing business ethics, we started with one of the stakeholders, important stakeholders, whom we call the shareholders, and in today's discussion we will be focusing on the employees and the business ethics. Let us see the flow of today's discussion. The total discussion is subdivided into 5 modules. Module 1 deals with the models of organization and the employees as stakeholders. Module 2 deals with the ethical issues of the firm employee relation. Module 3 deals with the ethical challenges of globalization. Module 4 deals with corporate citizen and employee relations, and module 5 deals with towards a sustainable environment. So, first we will start our discussion with the models of organization. There are 3 models based on which an organization is discussed. First is the rational model of the organization, second is the political view of the organization, and third is the caring aspect of the organization. First, we will start our discussion with the rational model of the organization. When we try to understand what is a rational model of the organization, it is the formal set of hierarchy which is present in the organization. It is the set of organizational structures, how it is well defined, and how it is the organizational chart, how it looks like, which shows the division of the roles and responsibilities, and how the decision making flows from top to bottom, and the information also moves up from bottom to top. So, when you are discussing of a rational model of the organization, we are focusing, it is that view of the organization which is focuses on an explicitly defined structure of the organization and which is explicitly defined and openly employed, and the structure is so defined that it helps to achieve the goals of the organization with the best possible or the maximum efficiency. It is the rational coordination, we can tell, it is the rational coordination of the activities so that the members can achieve their maximum goal and also the organization can achieve its maximum goal. Also, if you can understand, it is the information which rises from the bottom of the organization to the top of the organization, and we can tell like there are 3 layers of the organization: the operations level, the middle management level, and the top management level. And because it is a formal set of relationship and it is a formal structure as defined by the organization, then there is also a contract which binds the 2 parties, which is the employer and the employee. So, and there is a contractual obligation. So, what is that contractual obligation? It is the contracts obligate the employees to loyally pursue the organization's goals, and the employer also has a moral responsibility to provide for a just wage and just working condition. So, by the bindings of the employment contract and also by the expectations of the psychological contract, the employee is supposed to work loyally towards, like, working towards the objective of the organization, so it gets fulfilled, and the employer's responsibility, corresponding responsibility, is to provide the employees with a just wage and just working conditions. However, it may so happen the ethical issues with relevance to this are conflicts of interest may happen when the employee or the employer work not for the interest for what they are defined to work inside the organization, but they work for fulfilling their some self interest within the organization. So, the necessary conditions is for a conflict of interest to arise is employee may be interested so to work for the sake of incentives, and incentives which are going to satisfy his or her own need. So, employee or officer is engaged in carrying out a certain task for his or her employer. So, what happens? He may work against the need of the or the demands of the organization to satisfy some of his or her personal need. The employer also may correspondingly work for fulfilling his or her own self interest and deprive the workers of the rights which, like the right to just wage and the right to a just working condition, which they are supposed to get as a part of that contract, they may be deprived of that because the employer may be moved by the decision, by the self interest to maximize the profit for oneself. So, here we may understand that the organization and the managers, they do have a agency relationship. The employees also do have an agency relationship with the organization or the principal. So, in any case, any of the acts done by the manager or the employee which goes against this agency relationship and the function to fulfill their own self interest, these give rise to conflicts of interest. We will discuss in details about these things when we are going to discuss issues like taking of gifts and bribes, taking of like stealing away information from the organization, insider trading. These are certain things we will discuss in details more when we are discussing on the ethical issues of employee and firm's relationship. For now, we have to understand, like, the rational view of the organization is the formal, well defined structure, roles and responsibilities of the organization, which gives us a clear picture how the organization has decided to function so that they can reach the goal efficiently, how the information is expected to flow through a formal channel, and how the decision making flows from top to bottom, and what are the channels of that decision making, and it directs us towards the thing like the employee and employer are like they have a contract with each other which they must be respecting, mutually respecting. And if anyone goes against this contract for any of the personal reasons, moved more by some of the self interest and compromising the interest, greater interest for the organization that they are in, then that leads to conflict of interest. How we can deal with the conflicts of interest is like removing oneself from the task in which the conflict of interest arises, eliminating the interest that creates the conflict of interest, eliminating or changing the obligation of serving the employer's interest, and remaining free of any incentive to serve another interest while serving the employer. So, this is like the way that we eliminate this conflict is sometimes it may so happen because both the managers and the employees are in an agency responsibility towards the organization, then the question, the dilemma that may arise in the employee's mind is responsible to whom. In many cases it may so happen like the employee may get directions from the employer to act in the interest of the employer, which may be against the interest or the good of the organization or the society at large. So, at that point of time, the dilemma may come in a person's mind like, whom I am responsible to? Is it like that whatever my employer is asking me, I have to do that because I have entered into a contract with the employer, or I am responsible more to the organization and the society at large? So, these type of conflicts may arise, and due to this, because along with contract comes a feeling of obligation to respond to the contract, because the employer is giving a fair wage, employer is giving a good working condition. So, the employee feels obligated to respond to the demands of the employer. But if the demand is in same line with the greater interest of the organization, then there is no conflict to it. But when there is, suppose a conflict arises when the employer functions for his own specific self-interest and tries to utilize the employee to meet that end, in that case the controversy or a conflict may arise in the employee's mind, whom I am more responsible to. And to eliminate that, to put a check on that, the employee may either eliminate or change the obligation for serving the employer's interest, or they may remain free of any incentive to serve any other interest while serving the employer. This is when maybe the second case is when the employer is, you are in a employment contract with one employer and another employer is maybe trying to establish a relationship with you to know some of the inside information of how the business is functioning. So these are the situations where conflicts of interest may happen, and these are some of the techniques to eliminate that conflict of interest. Second, we are going to discuss about the political model of the organization. In the political model of the organization, we understand, like, though there is a formal structure given in the organization which deals with actually how ideally rather how information is flowing across the different organizational levels, or how the decision gets made in the organization. But in real cases, what happens, there are many informal links formed within the organizational structure itself, which is beyond the formally defined structure, based on certain power pockets formed, or the formal or informal powers enjoyed by individuals or a group of individuals that determine the direction in which where decisions are actually made or how the information actually flows. So this is called the political model of the organization, which is based on not as how the formal structure looks like, or ideally how the information and the responsibility flows like, but this structure is a network of relationships formed within the organization based on the power difference shared in the organization, power dynamics between one individual and a group, or a group of individuals and another group of individuals within the organization. This is called a political view of the organization. So based on these power dynamics, it may so happen like the employees may be like exploited by the management because they have more power than that of the employees. So the political view of the organization sometimes compares the organization with that of the government, and there is a similarity argument and there is a dissimilarity argument also, whether the corporate is like the similar like the government or it is dissimilar from the government. Let be two of the viewpoints have their own arguments, and based on that what it decides to be the right of the employees, and just compared to the rights of the citizens. Let us have a look into these two different arguments of similarity argument and dissimilarity argument, whether the organization is like the government or not. The similarity view tells it defines the similarity of power between the management and the government, and it implies that the employees should have rights similar to that of citizens' rights. The argument it put forwards is that a company's management is a centralized decision making body that exercises power like a government, and the management exercise their power over and authority over the employees like the government exercise their power over their citizens. So to safeguard this, the employees must be having a corresponding right as similar to that of the citizens to safeguard their own rights from being exploited by the organization, the employer, or as similar to like that of the citizens getting exploited by the government. The similarity argument also tells like the management has the power to distribute income, status and freedom among the corporation's constituencies like the government does with respect to the citizens. So, and also the corporation shares the monopoly of the power on power like the government possesses. And it, in the same light, it argues like since the management's power over the employees is similar to that government's powers of citizen, so the employee should be having certain rights to protect them from the management's power, just as the citizens have right to protect them from the government's power. So here we will be discussing in the subsequent discussions again right to privacy, right to employment, right to a fair wage, right to a good working conditions. This will be coming again this will be discussing again when we will be discussing the firms and employees relationship with the business ethics. So these are certain rights, and correspondingly also there are certain of the employees duties also towards the firm, just like the citizens do have certain duty towards the government. So again there are counter replies to this similarity argument, which tells like the power of government is based on consent, and so is unlike the power of managers, which is based on the ownership of the company. So but again there is a counter argument which the similarity proponents of the similarity argument tells like today the power of the managers do not come from that of the ownership, because ownership and management have been separated now. So another viewpoint is that the power of management is limited by unions, but the similarity proponents again tell like in many organizations today there are no workers are not unionized, so we cannot tell like they are the corporation is not having similarity to that of the government, and so correspondingly like employees are not having similar rights like that of the citizen. The counter argument for similarity argument tells like it is not easy for citizens to escape the power of government, but the employees, if they want, can escape the power of managers. But again the counter argument is that it is not always easy to find a job or change a job. So even if the employees want, it is not easy for them to find out a second employer or change the job. Here in this framework we will also discuss about organizational politics. The difference between the political model of the organization and the organizational politics is in the political model of the organization that we were discussing now is the power structure as is evident from the formal views of the organization, and which gives rise to certain rights of the employees and to protect them from getting exploited by the employers. But when we were discussing organizational politics, it is more of the power game, power play within the organization, which arises from informal relationship. Organizational political model of the organization that we have discussed, these models, the political model of the organization is the power structure which is there within the organization, and it helps in the organization to function effectively or not. When we are talking of organizational politics, these are certain political techniques, tactics which have been given rise by the informal relationship, informal coalitions formed, and these are directed more towards the self interest of the people and not directed towards the organizational objectives. These are using resources of the organization for some personal self motivated gains. So, what are these political organizational politics are played? Some of the examples are, it is like blaming or attacking others so that you can pass on the responsibility of something to others, controlling of information and purposefully creating some information asymmetry within the organization, so that by the information hoarding you gain and others are not able to have an access to that particular information. Developing a base of support for one's ideas. Before you enter into a meeting, you establish a network of people who are going to support your views. So it may so happen whatever discussion is done in a meeting, the conclusion of it is favorable, goes in favor of you, is favorable to your self interest, but may not be favorable for the purpose of the organization. Ingratiation means you go on praising your leaders, your bosses, without challenging them to be in their good book, so that you get recognized by them and they take a favorable approach towards you and your demands and give some like concessions to you when required. Association with the influential, you get associated with influential people so that you remain within a powerful circle, and by that you also gain some power, that is we call the derived power. You develop power coalitions with others and develop strong allies of yourself, so that you get protected and you gain your strength from that strong like coalitions that you have formed. Creating obligations, you do something good, favorable to other person, even when not asked for, even when they do not want it, and you like create obligations of other people to serve your interest. So other things could be getting control over scarce resources which are also desired by others, and that's how you gain power in the organization, and you establish favorable relationships with influential people in the organizations, so they can speak for you when time comes and like leads to your image building and impression management. So all these can be explained from the utilitarian perspective, from the justice perspective, rights perspective, and care perspective. we have to keep in mind, like when all these techniques, whichever perspective we were taking, goes against the purpose for which the organization exists, and these are utilized for the purpose of serving the self interest of the organization, which may or may not be in similar lines with the main organizational purpose, then on case to case basis we can tell like whether it is ethical or unethical in nature. For that reason, the goal of the organization itself first have to be an ethical goal, and then with comparison with that we can tell whether adoption of these political techniques, tactics are based on the 4 different principles that we have learned is ethical or unethical in nature. Characteristics of the next is the caring model of the organization. Here the caring model talks of, like, it is again a feminist orientation model where we are more focused into the relationships that the employer and employee have towards one another, and one employee has to relationship with the other employee, the employee's relation with the organization, and how to respect that relations with the end where the employees are end taking care of the employees, that is the end in itself, and employees are not made a means for gaining productivity in the organization. So respecting the employees' needs and demands and taking care of the employees, keeping in mind employees are important stakeholders as they are the end in themselves and they cannot be utilized as means to a particular end. So caring is focusing entirely on persons, and caring is undertaken as an end in itself, not as an instrument for productivity, and it is personal and it is growth enhancing for the cared for, means we will focus on the personal development and growth of the employees. However, there could be some flip side to the being a caring organization, and this approach, this people orientation of the organization, this caring approach of the organization has to be done with very precautionary steps, otherwise it may get misutilized or misinterpreted. So caring for the needs of others without thinking of oneself may give rise to burnout. So that is when you are always thinking of how the other person is going to be happy and you are not taking care of your own self. So that may lead to a feeling of burnout or getting exhausted. This is what suppose if you are too employee centric and may ignore to be production centric also, and you think of the personal growth and development of the employees and start maybe giving less of value to the organization's corresponding development of the organizations and meeting of the organization's needs, it may so happen like you get drained in your resources but adding no value for the sustenance of the organization itself. So this has to be a well balanced approach where there is a development of the individual and also the development of the organization both together. not caring enough for others because fatigue, self-interest or disinterest leads us to ignore their needs. On the other hand, if you are too production centric and you are closing your eyes to the demands and responsibilities towards the employees that of the demands and responsibilities as expected by the employees, there may be a feeling of alienation from the employees who may not feel any motivation or sense of involvement to stay back with the organization, because they are not able to see their personal growth in your growth plan, and they may feel like they are getting exploited for the cause of the organization, and there is no appreciation of their values, but a depreciation is happening based on they are also getting drained of each day without being taken care of. The organization systematically drives out caring with layoffs, bureaucracy, managerial styles that see employees as disposable, or rewards that encourage competitiveness and discourage caring. So this may also happen because organization through its practices, HR practices and organizational structure design may take up things which shows like they are less caring to their employees. So when it comes for downsizing, when it comes for restructuring, the first person who is to face the first like the stakeholder or the first entity who needs to get addressed to be to is so that this restructuring or downsizing is done is the employee, and without thinking of whether our technology was proper, whether the project plan that we developed was proper or not, first hit comes to the employee. And so it's, and like when you're talking of rewards are encouraged and for being competitive in nature, so question will obviously, there are pockets of question which can be asked over here, at the cost of what? So if the answer to that is at the cost of the the wellness of the employees, at the cost of the employees getting overdone in the organization, they've been asked in the name of employee engagement, they are asked to give more than that they can actually stretch them to that ultimate level. So these are maybe signals for organizations which through its design is design like such, it is discouraging the caring aspect for the organization. So what we are trying to tell over here, when you're talking of a caring organization, there should be a balance between how much to care, whom to care for, and to what extent, and that is called the due care theory. So if you move towards a balanced care approach where there is a balance between the care shown to the employees for their personal growth and development, and that is balanced by the organizational growth and development also, then it is a true care which is taken. Otherwise it may be, if misinterpreted, this caring concept may be used in a wrong sense, like that of pampering, or if not used also, it may happen that the organization is giving like dumb ear, deaf ear, and is dumb towards respecting the employees' demands and needs, and looking towards the growth and development of the employees, which may again, because it is again a stakeholder theory, which may have a negative effect on the image of the business and how it is run. So, this brings us to the conclusion of the models of the organization, where we have discussed the three different models: the rational model, political model, and the caring aspect, and we have discussed the pros and cons of each and the employees relation with the organization, how it is happening with respect to these three different models. Based on these models, we understand that based on these firm employee relations, certain ethical issues which we have mentioned develops, which we will be taking up in details in the next module of our discussion. Thank you.